Hey, this is Brian Stillman. I'm with BeTerrific. We're here at CES 2020 in Las Vegas, Nevada, the Las Vegas Convention Center, looking at all the cool gear and technology and software and just all sorts of interesting stuff. But right now, this is pretty cool to me because when I'm not in front of the microphone, I'm actually behind the camera usually. So we're here with Fredricks. You are a drone director of photography, drone pilot, filmer, shooter, the whole thing, and I want to talk about that. I want to learn from you, man.
So I've been in the television and film industry about 20 years. I started Fox Sports Net. That's a long story and a whole different ballgame.
Okay.
We're talking about that. We're talking about drones. And about 5 years ago at a trade show just like this, I discovered my first DJI drone from the actual founders of the company.
Right.
Convinced them on the trade show floor to give me one. You know, they were selling for box them. They're selling for $1,200. I said, look, I'm a big filmmaker. I'm at Fox. Give me one of those. They did. And then a buddy of mine was doing a sci-fi film, super low budget like Sharknado, and I had the drone there and it had no controls, and I was flying down and the director shot. It messed everything up, but enough people saw it and wanted to know more about it. I actually started getting more jobs, and then the technology advanced, and now I teach at 3 universities. I film stuff all over the country and do a lot of television and film.
What made you interested in drone and aerial photography, videography, and filming?
The drone. Okay, here's something for filmmakers like yourself.
Yeah.
When you want to get a dynamic shot, you actually need a dynamic subject, right? You need something in the video or the film to create that action and that integration. But with drone cinematography, you don't need that because the shot is dynamic.
Right.
The drone is flying through the air, and a static building that you could not show any other way to make it excitement. The drone flying around that building creates the excitement. So it's the dynamic use of the aerial cinematography that the drone creates, similar to what you would get in a 3D in a video game.
Right.
Cameras float in space. So that's the big deal.
It's that complete degree of movement that I think people find so fascinating and adds so much dynamism to the shot. How did you learn to pilot them? You said your first time out, it was you're screwing up the shot, so clearly that was not working.
Yeah, the radio control guys, the old school guys, that's no help. There was nothing on YouTube, that wasn't any help. It was really trial and error until I could finally figure out a system. When I figured out a system, then I had a lot of other cinematographers who wanted to learn how to fly.
Right.
So I started teaching them, and then I was fortunate enough to get hired by Unmanned Vehicle University out in Phoenix, and they teach pilots from all over the world. And so they gave me a little bit more structure because I wasn't an educator, and from that moment on, I just started putting together the flights, the courses, the type of cinematography. There's really 5 basic shots, so if you can do those, you can marry them all together and to get you can square that. I don't know what 5 squared is, but it's a lot.
I was going to ask you, it's not just knowing how to fly it, it's knowing how to shoot and fly it. Can you talk a little bit more about that? You said 5 basic shots. Can you talk a little bit more about the idea of being a good cinematographer as well as a good pilot?
That's a great question. At the beginning, it was funny because people didn't take camera operators of drones seriously. Right. It was all about military and inspection, and I said, the drone, it's a flying camera. Maybe you guys should use more cameramen to fly your drones. So yeah, if you don't know how to, if you're not good with framing and a photo, if you're not good with being able to look at a scene and have it set up right in your frame, you're not going to get the video that you want. So you have to still follow all the basic camera rules of cinematography. Leading a subject, getting the right angle, making sure, using your old school rule of thirds, right, where you divide up the image. And then of course there's the movement aspects, is the fact that you're in 3D space. So the most important thing is fly a straight line. Be able to fly a straight line forward or backwards. Be able to fly a straight line left or right. Because the minute you break that plane, it's similar to somebody being on a tripod and hitting the camera. So if you can't fly a straight line, you're going to ruin everything.
Right.
So imagine your drone is on a dolly or your drone is on a track.
Right.
You need to do that. Also, another thing you don't want to do is you don't want to turn the drone. A lot of pilots, if they're losing the shot, will turn the nose of the drone. As soon as you do that, it's similar to your camera guy turning the camera when he's trying to frame a shot. So what you want to do is you want to track everything dynamically so that the shots are nice and smooth. But if you can fly forward and backward in a straight line, left and right in a straight line, then you're able to combine those shots and to get, tilt and pan, reveals and pan, those kind of things. So you combine everything together, which I try to do in a lot of my work, and that's why it looks like, it does.
When you're confronting new students, is it harder to teach them to fly or harder to teach them to think like a cameraman?
That's two really good questions here. 'Cause I can tell you're a filmmaker, so the idea is the first thing, it's actually easier to teach them how to fly if they've never flown before, harder to teach them how to be a cameraman. I think flying is a learned skill, and I think cinematography is a gift. You know, I mean, you either have the creative vision or you don't. I can teach people the basics, you know, like, hey, make sure the settings are this way and the image is that way, but in terms of looking at an object and being able to film it creatively, I don't think that's teachable.
So, talk to me a little bit about, in terms of your own career, how have you sort of pushed forward with the idea of being a drone photographer, drone cinematographer? Where have you taken this? You know, you mentioned that you were teaching, but where else have you gone with it? Tell me a little bit more about what you've done.
So 5 years ago when this started, it was like the Wild West. There was no FAA laws. There was no laws. It was fly your drone wherever.
Yeah.
And I still couldn't figure out what was going wrong. And then there was racing drones. I thought I wanted to get into racing drones because my background in television and film is in second unit directing, action. So I do car chases, motorcycle chases, all that kind of stuff. And so I worked heavily with GoPros and cameras that were mounted. So when the drones came along, it was the next step. And then I thought, well, I'll do events. I'll get into events. And I didn't know if that was the idea. And then when the drones finally came out with the 1-inch sensor and the ability to create really compelling cinematography and videography, I leaned back into the stuff that I was doing, television commercials and music videos, things like that. But then the education thing kind of took off, and I got a kick out of taking people that have never learned how to fly before and turn them into pilots and maybe further their education, get them jobs. I mean, I've got a lot of people jobs in the film industry and outside of the film industry, but it was planned. I started this 5 years ago, and I sort of knew I had a mission to stay in the drone infrastructure and industry, and then just sort of take it in the direction that it took me.
Right.
Because I didn't know what that direction would be. These people out here still don't know. Right. You know, there's flying cars, there's now there's drones that go underwater. I mean, that industry doesn't know, but I can just tell it just getting bigger and bigger and expanding. So I'm in a really good place. You don't want to be a pioneer. Those are the people that got the arrows in their back.
Right.
You sort of want to be the people that came next. The ones that are right behind them. So I feel like I'm coming next. It was those remote control guys are the pioneers, and they're done. They're out. So the idea is just right behind them, learning the technology, and then taking it, you know, to make me a better person and my students a better person, and of course, you know, rolling some cash.
That's always the trick.
Cash, yeah.
As the technology's changed, how has that changed what you're able to do?
The advancement in technology has democratized the industry, where when I first started in television and film, you needed a $50,000 Betacam to film. And then eventually that came down to a $6,000 Red, right? So the same thing with drones. There were drones prior to when I got started, but they were like this one, $25,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 drones. They looked like little helicopters. So when the technology got better and the prices came down, and I could get a 1-inch drone, I could get a drone with a 1-inch sensor and start shooting with people that are filming with Reds, you know, 4K, or shooting with DSLRs. That's when it sort of equaled the playing field that me as a mid-level producer was able to compete against, you know, studios.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, is what's helped.
That's
with the
absolutely what I've seen with the technology for cameras and stuff. I can go out and shoot a documentary now, and I don't need to spend, you know, $30,000 to get the digital cameras and stuff that I want.
Exactly.
We're seeing a lot of regulation coming into place now. The FAA, you mentioned that earlier. I know a new rule was just passed like last week or something, where everyone has to have an ID attached to their drone. What's going on with that? How is that affecting things?
Well, I'll put on my flight instructor wings now.
Yeah.
The flight instructor, well, first of all, that rule it's not a rule yet.
Right.
So it's 60 days per pro.
Right. Isn't it public commentary now?
For pilots and so initially there was no rules, and now there are rules. As a professional, I like the idea of rules. Yeah. I like the FAA having where we have to teach a course, where students have to take a test. It kind of weeds out, you know, people are going to do bad things anyway, but it sort of weeds out the one-off bad guy. You know, the guy that, I'm going to get a drone for Christmas and fly it into my friend's face, or, you know, something like that. So it gets rid of them. It also cleaned out some of the people that were in the industry. It was too hard for them to take a test. They didn't want to bother with it. And I think the ID system they're talking about is going to be a good thing. Airplanes have transponders, and you need to know, and you get to know where they are. And I think if there's enough regulation in place that doesn't affect my ability to earn an income or other pilots, I think it'll help the public ease up a little on it, because they're all freaking out about my privacy and my this and my that. And I'm like, turn off your phone, turn off your Facebook. You don't have to worry about privacy.
Right.
So it's kind of like, but I think the rules are good. I think I'm looking forward to when the FAA actually requires a physical flight test, where you have to prove that you can fly a drone, maybe to a designated examiner like me. I'm taking private pilot lessons just to add to whatever it is I'm doing.
Right.
And there's a ground school and there's a flight part of it too.
Right.
So I'm not opposed to the regulation. I think it's a good thing. And I think the people that are the people that don't want to be regulated anyway.
Do you think that new rule is going to end up passing?
Yeah, I think so. I think anything to tamp down on the industry and make the non-drone pilot, the guy you're flying over his house, feel more comfortable. Yeah, I think it'll pass.
Now, from let's talk about the art of what you do a little bit. What makes you talked about needing to be able to fly a straight line and stuff, but let's take it to the next step. To really get great dynamic shots, to really take it to the next level. So let's say you have someone out there who's learned to fly a drone, and they're not bad shooters. They've got a gist of it, but they're like, okay, well, I know how to get a good shot when I'm holding a camera. I know how to get a good shot when I'm on sticks or when I'm on a dolly or whatever. What do I want to start paying attention to if I'm flying the camera?
Well, first of all, there are manual settings in these drones. As much as I like to use manual settings, I recommend not using manual settings, because the AI, the robots in the drone, can compensate for lighting a lot quicker than you can. They can take a look at a scene and adjust all the colors. What I do recommend is that pilots lower their horizon. Nobody wants to see a bunch of sky. As soon as you bring in a bunch of sky, you're going to blow out the image with too much exposure. Right. So lower the gimbal, show more ground, and then try to and then in terms of creative, I always like to put the sun in a great place where maybe I get a lens flare here and there or something like that.
What's the biggest obstacle that you think is keeping more people from learning to shoot like this?
Well, initially, they're not, personally, I don't think they're that expensive. You can get into some entry-level drones that'll do 4K video for $500, $600. The higher-end drones that shoot cinematography like footage are in the $2,000 range. But at that point, people are going to make a career out of it.
Right.
I think the idea is, I think some people are afraid now to take that. They don't think they can pass the FAA test and actually get a license, because not only now do you need a commercial license, but they've started, you need a recreational license too. So the ability just to open up your drone for Christmas and go flying, that's just not happening anymore.
Right.
So I think that's scaring a lot of people away. I was a crappy student in college. I cheated my way through. My major was history of rock and roll and film. So when I had to study for this test, I was nervous wreck. I was paranoid. And I went through about 20 hours where I locked myself in a room and studied all the documentation, and then I took my test and got a 98, whatever camera I'm supposed to look at. And the FAA doesn't care about your scores unless you get a 98. So the fact that I got a 98, then it's important. But if I would have got a 70, I still would have passed. Right. But it wouldn't have been, the score wouldn't have been as important.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest barrier right now, is the fear of actually, learning all this regulate, because you're a pilot. Yeah. All the responsibilities of being a pilot are now your responsibilities. Right. And so a lot of people don't want to get involved in that.
But just hunker down and study, and
it's not hard. Yeah. It's really not hard. Go to my school, go to his school. It's not that hard.
What's been most exciting for you over your career? Your career in terms of being a cinematographer, being a shooter, being a drone pilot?
Well, two things. One is actually become an educator, because I really like teaching the students. I didn't realize how much I'd enjoy that, but that's fun. Secondly is I was fortunate enough to get involved with a climate reality project. That's Al Gore's thing, and I've been documenting the Salton Sea in California. Oh, wow. And how, and it only during the winter, because it's 130 degrees, 140 in the summer. So I've been traveling around the lake, and I've been shooting that all with drones. And what I've learned about the lake and the cinematography that you can get out in the desert's been amazing. So that's been the most like fulfilling thing that I've done.
I was going to ask you what's one of your favorite shoots that you've been on, but would that be it? I mean,
oh no, that's just the feel good thing.
Okay, so what's one of those fun shoots you've done?
Well, I've done a lot of television shows, so I helped with the Game of Thrones. I did pre-visualization with that, which is not like being there. It's doing stuff at a separate location, providing the studios with 3D look at what the thing would be.
Sure.
I've worked with HBO. I worked on the Fast and Furious. So there's been a lot of things that I've worked on. I'm working on a really fun project in California called Sunset Confidential. So that's a lot of fun because we're getting permits to fly around the city.
Oh, cool.
And, it's always good when you have permits to do those kind of things.
Right. Well, yeah, I imagine.
Yeah.
Cool. So where do you see things going? Last question. Where do you see things going in terms of drone piloting, in terms of drone cinematography?
The Autel just came out with a 6K camera with a 1-inch sensor. So for me, that puts us on a level of, and I'm sure the other manufacturers will follow suit, but that brings us into the red. So I think cinematography of what the drones are capable of is going to really quickly catch up with, major cameras that are used on the ground. I think in terms of, I think there'll be a lot more drones used in all kinds of news gathering and also in, and I think the rules, as far as the rules are concerned, the FAA will get their, and these organizations that are running the industry will get their stuff together, and we'll have a really coherent licensing program and educational program to lead into licensing pilots.
Where do you want to go next? This is my real last question. What's next for you?
I came to Hollywood to shoot movies, right?
Right.
And I've done TV, I've done sports, I've done TV commercials, I've done music videos, I've done everything but movies. So I want to do a freaking movie, but now that I'm a drone cinematographer, I want to have a lot of it shot with drones. I think I want to shoot the whole movie with drones.
Whole movie with drones.
Keep the cameras in the air and never bring them down to the ground. So
awesome.
obviously, for me personally, it would be to do a movie.
Cool.
Skip,
thanks so much for coming by.
This was awesome. I had a blast, man.
I'm glad. It's been great to meet you.
I like the panels too. Those are great panels back there.
Thanks.
The light panels are awesome.
So, CES 2020. I'm Brian Stillman. This has been a fun one for me because I'm a filmmaker, and getting a chance to talk to someone who can maybe show me some new skills is always a thrill. Stick around. We're going to bring you so much more. BeTerrific, CES 2020, Las Vegas, Nevada. We'll be back.